Okay, it's time. Let's get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to and thank you to come here to join our session. We are so glad to be here to share something we did in the latest version and talk about what we'll do in the future. That's the Harbor deep dive. Okay, today we have two speakers. I'm Steven Zhou, one of the Harbor core maintainer. I'm a staff engineer working for VMware. My GitHub ID is Steven Zhou. Yeah, that's my icon. And we have a co-speaker, Daniel Jiang. Yeah, he is also one of our core maintainer and from VMware. And besides these two speakers, today we have a special guest speaker. I will invite him to stage later. Sorry. Okay. Hooray. Yeah. The latest version of Harbor is just released yesterday. Okay. The release cycle of 1.8 was one of the longest cycles and involved the highest number of contributions from community members ever. Thanks to every community participants. You are awesome. Okay. Here is the agenda. Today we have 4 items on today's agenda. First, we'll quickly go through the overall fundamentals of Project Harbor in case you did not attend the intro session and help you to pick up some context of the project. Next, as we just released the latest version 1.8, which comes packed with a great number of new features and improvements. So we'd like to highlight several features which are long awaited by the community. Then we'll invite our guest speaker to talk about the future of Harbor project, our roadmap. Last, we'll share something related with Harbor community, which means a lot to the project. We hope the whole community can work close together to make Harbor, a better and better. So now, let's welcome our co-speaker, Daniel Jiang, to tell you what's Harbor and what Harbor can help you in the cloud-native world. Welcome, Daniel.
Thank you. Hola a todos. Soy Daniel, and nice to meet you here. And I will give you a brief introduction about Harbor. So Harbor is an open source, trusted cloud-native registry project hosted by CNCF as an incubating project, and this is our website, goharbor.io. When we started the project, we chose the name Harbor because it's the place where people store the containers, and that reflects the core feature of the project by then, and managing container images. We wanted to make things just work for Docker CLI, so we chose a non-intrusive approach to add features by building components around the open source Docker distribution. For example, to support the authentication, we just add another extensible layer for that, so it works with your local database, your LDAP or Active Directory of your organization. And recently in 1.8, we introduced OIDC integration as an answer to the long ask for SSO support, and you'll hear more details later. And this approach ensures Harbor natively supports the V2 API, and it perfectly works with the Docker client, kubectl, and whatever OCI client to pull and push images. And at the same time, it supports multiple storage backends as Docker distribution does. Later, with the rise of the Helm, we added the support of serving the Helm Chart. With a similar approach by integrating and wrapping the API of Helm Chart Museum. So as long as the API is compatible, it works great with the Helm CLI also. And by the way, all the major management features are exposed as REST APIs. So in addition to our original fancy UI, which is loved by the IT admins, it's easy to do necessary modification and integrate Harbor into your software system. For example, a friendly user in the community has been maintaining a good CLI tool for Harbor, which is called Harbor Control, which is a good alternative to the UI, and it's a very good solution if you want to write automation script. So it's worth checking out. So that's the fundamental. And in addition to storage, for enterprise scenarios, security is a key area that we want to enhance. As a content registry, we want to make sure a user only sees what he's allowed to. So we provide the isolation and RBAC. There's the term project we introduce in Harbor, which maps to a namespace of the resources, and at the same time, it's a group of users. So that means to access a resource in the project, a user has to be added to that project as a member and be granted a role which matches his access level. For example, to push or write images, he needs a developer role, and to pull or read a guest role is sufficient. And with access control, we can control what the user can do. But in addition to that, we also provide access log to track what was done and who did it, which is also an important aspect of security and probably very helpful for auditing purpose. And there are more advanced features by integration with other open source softwares. By integration with Claire, we provide image scanning so user can trigger the scan and see the results, know what CVEs are there in your images in Harbor. And by integration with Notary, we support image signing. So user can enable Docker Content Trust and push the signature into Notary instance within Harbor, and can check the signature status and on Harbor's UI and API. And besides showing this vulnerability and the signature information, more importantly, we introduced the distribution policy, which will intercept the request to access the artifact and block the pooling if the artifact's metadata does not meet the requirement of the policy. Which means, for example, if the level of vulnerability is of an image is higher than the threshold you set in the policy, you can block it from pooling. So whoever pushed the image, if he wants it to be used, has to fix it and push it to Harbor rescan to make sure the high-risk problem are fixed. Yeah. So that's the security part. And in the area of operation, we fulfilled our promises in KubeCon in Seattle and made a lot of improvement, such as robot account. If you don't want to set your LDAP credentials in the CI system, you can generate a robot account to pull and push image only, which doesn't map to any user and have very minimal privileges, so it's very secure. And the replication, it has been an interesting feature for many users, which enables you to replicate images from one Harbor instance to another. You can use it to back up your data or distribute the image data across Harbor instances. And in 1.8, we made significant enhancements in this area, and it will allow you to pull image or artifacts from other instances to your Harbor instance. We also provide an extensible framework to make it possible to replicate artifacts between Harbor and other non-Harbor registries, such as Docker Hub, ECR, etc., etc. So it is so powerful, so we think it's justified the NG tag, which means next generation. And there's also online garbage collection where user can trigger or schedule the GC task to free up the storage space without having to shut down the instance. This is not new in 1.8, but yesterday in the session, I found quite a few users have such requirement, but don't know about the existence of it. So please try it and let us know what you think about it. Okay, and in regards to deployment of Harbor, as we wanted to make Harbor everywhere on different platforms, we provide different ways to install it. The most basic one, you can use the Docker Compose if you want to install Harbor on a Docker host. You just run a script and the things just work. If you ever had any experience using it, please do take another look at the version 1.8, because we made refactor to the configuration file and remove a lot of hard code and make it much easier if you want to customize your storage or set up Harbor with your, your own or external database and Redis data management. And if you have a Kubernetes cluster, you can deploy Harbor to your cluster using the Helm chart. And with the help of powerful Kubernetes, it is also the recommended way if you want to set up a tray of Harbor. And last but not least, if you are a fan of Bash, we also provide a Bash release for Harbor. Using Bash, it will provision the VM, install the required Docker runtime on your stem cell, and inject the configuration to the Harbor instance and use Bash to manage the lifecycle of Harbor. Yeah, so that's all for the overview. I think, yeah, Stephen will let us know, highlight something in the one night.
Thank you, Daniel. Wonderful sharing. So let's move on. I think next part is we are talking about some highlights in latest version 1.8. I think Daniel had mentioned some new feature like a robot account and health check API just now. And here I want to highlight two other attractive features delivered in 1.8. One is replication engine, and another one is OIDC support. Okay, sorry. Okay, so the first one I want to talk about replication. Okay, so replication is a very key feature in Harbor. Replication can help you to transfer your image content from one registry to another registry, and maybe you can use replication to keep your content synchronized among multiple image registries. So in 1.8, we heard some requirements, for replication to support. In previous, we only support replication between Harbor instance. So we heard some words from community to support the replication between Harbor and the non-Harbor registry. So in 1.8, we spent effort to do critical improvements for replication. So we name it to NG, next generation. Why we name it to NG? Because the overall design of the replication is totally refactored, and you can see more than 85% of the code is rewrite. So those refactoring now we support a very flexible, powerful, and stable framework to support some new features. The first one is besides replicate the image content between Harbor and Harbor, now we can support Harbor replication content between Harbor and the non-Harbor registries. And in previous version, we only support, replication image. Now, with this refactoring, we can support replication both image and chart. Okay. In previous version, there is only one push mode, so that means you can only replicate your content on current Harbor to the remote registry. So in the 1.8, we introduced a new mode, pull mode. That means now you can replicate your content from the upstream registries. Okay. So about the non-Harbor registry, as the first step in 1.8, we support Docker Harbor. That means now you can replicate the image from Harbor and Docker Harbor. And we also support Docker distribution. That's the native Docker registry. Okay. So, and another one is the Huawei Container Registry. Besides these three, I want to say more words here. For the Docker registry, this one, you can, if your registry is compatible with the Docker registry, then you can use this Docker driver to enable the replication between Harbor and your registry. That means this Docker driver can be used to compatible the V2 registries. Okay, and in previous the replication is based on policy. That means the replication can be launched with a policy. That's an easy and powerful way to launch a replication. So in 1.8, we still kept the policy-based approach. You can create a policy to define the source and the destination replication, and you can apply kinds of filters to narrow down what content you want to replicate. You can also to set different triggers, like manually trigger launch the replication or schedule launch a scheduled task to, to launch a replication at some time later. Also, you can set it to, based on event. That means if some new image pushed to your registry, then they can directly replicate it to the other registries. Okay, so for the future, for the next step of replication NG, we will support more, non-harbor registries. That means we extend the supporting registry list a lot. The ECR, Google Container Registry, Azure Container Registry, and Alibaba Container Registry. Besides, we will support more and more non-harbor registry in replication scenario. We started to concern to do some improvement of the performance, the replication performance. Maybe we will introduce some other, like P2P to improve the replication performance. And we also started to consider if we can find some way to improve the efficiency of the replication group. That means if with current solution, if you want to do replication among multiple registries, you need to create multiple policies. That may be a workload for the operator. So in the next step, we may introduce a replicator group. That means you just create a group and add some container registry into this group. Then the system will automatically handle this the replication between those different container registries. Okay, there will be two modes of support. One is the master. That means any change in the registry in the group, the change will be automatically replicated to other nodes. Okay. Also, you can specify which is the master and which is the slave. That means the replication only happen to from the master to all the slaves. Okay, that's the next step of replication. Okay, the next one is about OIDC. Okay, in many environments, the enterprise always have a strong requirement, to integrate Harbor with their existing identity solution when they adopt the Harbor to serve their container environments. So in the previous version, we have supported, enable AD or ADAP as the authentication backend of Harbor. So in 1.8, we introduce the OIDC support. So in the 1.8, administrator can now enable OIDC provider as the authentication backend of Harbor users. Of the Harbor, and the Harbor user can use their single sign-on credential to log into the Harbor portal. Okay, so the implementation is strictly following the OpenID specification. In a sense, the spec compatible provider should smoothly work with the Harbor. Okay, that's the expectation. Actually, anyway, some verification work needed to to verify. Some verify work may be required to confirm if the provider can support, work together with Harbor. Okay, so the implementation is the identity provider is configurable. So the administrator can do configuration via the web portal. It's very easy. After enable the OIDC authentication mode, the user can use the single sign-on credential to log into Harbor web portal. The SSO credential will be onboarded into the Harbor user system, and two activity are back process. Okay, so for the Docker CLI scenario, web SSO is not applicable. So a CLI secret will be generated as the delegation of the backend OIDC tokens for the user to access Harbor via Docker command line or Helm client. Okay, so in the 1.8, we have verified the Google identity and the DEX. They can work well with Harbor, and one of our end user has helped us to verify the OIDC solution in 1.8 can also work together with PIN Federate. So far, we have verified the 3 OIDC providers. So in future release, we'll verify more OIDC provider like Keycloak or some other OpenID compatible provider. Okay, so that's the two, attractive features in 1.8. Okay, that's the sense we have now. So I believe you guys want to know what's the future of Harbor and what fantastic things can see in the next releases. Okay, so I'd like to welcome the Harbor core maintainer, director of product manager VMware, Michael, to share the roadmap of Harbor. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Stephen. Hi, guys. Hi, guys. So a couple of the big things that we've been trying to do at Harbor is, this is a community-driven project. We're part of the CNCF. So our biggest thing is making sure that we listen to feedback, we listen to our users, and we adjust both the investments that we're making in Harbor as well as the roadmap that the product is taking. So from a lot of the feedback that we've been hearing both at this KubeCon, the previous events, as well as from issues on GitHub, we've kind of formulated two kind of swim lanes in terms of the areas that we're going to make investments in Harbor for the next 6 months, 9 months, or a year. Obviously, if any of you guys have additional thoughts or ideas on areas that you want us to invest in, come in our community, come and contribute on GitHub, create some issues, talk to us on Slack, and we'll be able to have a conversation about the needs that you guys have in your organizations. So when we look at the two swim lanes, one of it is all around management, and the other one is about extensibility. So let's take a look at the management first. Installing Harbor is fairly easy, but if we were to create a Kubernetes operator for it, then it will give you a native experience in Kubernetes for the lifecycle management, backup, and other operational aspects of Harbor. So that's one of the things that we want to enable to make it easier for you guys to manage Harbor the same way you manage other cloud-native assets in Kubernetes. Many of you are interested in putting Harbor in your organization and offering it as a service to some of your business units that either have distinct Kubernetes clusters or maybe they have parts of a cluster, maybe a namespace, or using some other type of RBAC. So if we were to enable project quotas, that will enable you to put some upper boundary from a consumption standpoint to your business units that are using Harbor. So instead of creating a separate installation of Harbor for every business unit, you can instead now create projects and not only add the authenticated users to that project, you will be able to add the artifacts, the container images, the Helm charts, but now you'll be able to also add policy from a storage and quota perspective. Some of you are using CI/CD processes where not only are you building your images using that process, but you're also attaching some additional metadata like labels into that. Today, Harbor doesn't import those labels. Instead, we offer you the ability to add that metadata in Harbor, but that doesn't translate one-to-one to your container images. Instead, now we're going to be able to import the labels from Harbor, from Docker container images, and then we'll surface them in Harbor, so you'll be able to have the best of both worlds. You can do labels and management from the container images, as well as label and management from Harbor itself. And those labels apply to things like replication, the views in the UI, and we have some additional features we might enable in the future along kind of the same path. From a logging standpoint, today you can see the logs of Harbor. As you guys scale your footprint of Harbor, it's very important to be able to ship those logs to external tools, whether that's Elk, Splunk, or even a syslog endpoint. So we're going to provide a sync resource that will allow you to kind of push those logs out. And as you saw earlier, we talked about the metrics API. The Harbor has transformed now to a more stable product. So observability has been a key part of the things that we want to enable. The health API, the metrics CPU, additional metrics around container images and things like scanned images or vulnerabilities found. So all of those things are in our pipeline to enable for you, so you'll be able to gather as much intelligence from what's happening in Harbor as possible. And the last part is perfect scale. That's something that we've always been addressing. We'll continue to improve in Harbor. We're making stability fixes, performance, scale, so you can have more container images in Harbor. You'll be able to pull and push more container images, and we'll be able to scale out your architecture. So let's talk about extensibility a little bit. So we understand that Harbor is not the only tool in your environment. You have a lot of investments in products, services, and other tools. So it's important for us to make sure that we play very well with others. The work that we've done with OIDC is a key part of that. The work we've done around the replication and what Steven mentioned earlier is allowing you to replicate Harbor to Docker Hub, Docker Registry, Huawei Cloud. We're going to add more replication providers so that pretty much all of the most widely used registries will be able to interface with Harbor very well. So continuing down the path, webhooks was one of the things that we initially wanted to add in 1.8, but due to some circumstances, it didn't make it in. We'll add it on the next release, and that will allow you to kind of hook Harbor into other tools that you have, so you can be getting notifications, you can act on different actions that are happening, and allow you to kind of better integrate with other products. From an interrogation standpoint, today we only have one thing. We do vulnerability static analysis. But that's not where we want to stop. There's a lot of products out there that do analysis of images, and there is also third-party commercial solutions that do a really good job about analyzing certain artifacts. So our goal here is to kind of abstract the static analysis that you have today and make it an interrogation service, with static analysis being the first class of that, but also give the opportunity for other companies and other open source projects to come and create a plugin for Harbor, so that when you kind of look at your policy, you can figure out and say, hey, I want to do static analysis on this project, or I might want to use some other product to analyze my data, and maybe use both of them at the same time. So you'll be able to get results from multiple entities around the analysis of your images. Proxy cache is something that's been asked over and over and over again in the last year or so. It's going down the path of facilitating faster throughput in terms of getting your images up and running. That's something that's been on our minds for a while, and we want to enable it for you guys within our short-term roadmap. Along the same lines is the P2P distribution. If you came to a couple of the previous Harbor sessions we had so far, we even had a demo of Dragonfly, which is a P2P tool from Alibaba. And there's also Uber's Kraken. So there's multiple projects that kind of help in the kind of preheating your images and faster distribution. We want to make sure we enable that. Especially, I'm actually on SIG Windows as well. So when you go into the Windows path, your images go from megabytes to gigabytes. So the ability to transfer these huge data sets in a fast and efficient way is going to be very important to us. And the last but not least, I kept this one of my favorite. Today, we only support Helm charts and we support container images. That will not be the case in the future. We want to start supporting additional artifacts. So as you're looking at your entire ecosystem of apps, you guys have scripts, you have jar files, you have, if you're familiar with CNAB, there's additional artifacts from that as well. So we want to make sure that Harbor becomes your repository of all your cloud-native assets. So we'll be able to import all of them. You'll be able to use our RBAC. You'll be able to use our versioning. You'll be able to push and pull them. Not all of them will support this interrogation service because it's going to be on a case-by-case basis. But our goal is to give you a holistic view of your cloud-native assets in Harbor, all operated under a single tool. Cool. That's it from me. So
thank you. Thank you, Michael, for the wonderful sharing. Yeah, I think we do not have enough time. I will quickly go through something about Harbor community. Every success OSS project will rely on a successful and healthy community. So for Harbor, we are trying to build an open, fair, and transparent, and self-government community. That's our goal and mission. for the community part. So let's quickly take a look at the current situation of Harbor. Actually, those numbers have been increased a lot during this week. Sorry. So far we have 7,900 plus GitHub start, and we also, our repo has been forked 2,200 plus. And for the commits, we have 6,700 plus commits. Okay, for those strongly growing, static numbers, you can see Harbor is a very popular and active project. So here is some, Harbor, more and more users adopt Harbor in their environment to accelerate the transferring process to the container world. So some of the users has also integrated Harbor in their solution, which are delivered to their customers. Harbor really help lots of company and users to gain success. Here are some selected ones. Some of them are top internet companies, and some of them are Fortune 500 company. Okay, all those achievements should be all thanks to to the broad community of contributors and maintainers, thanks to their strong support and valuable contribution. Till now, we have 126 contributors have done contributions to Harbor. Those they are located all over the world. Okay, so all over the world across 65 companies and 35 countries. Sorry. Okay, we also have 14 maintainers now. Those 14 maintainers are from 5 different companies. Okay, they are mainly located in the North America and Asian Pacific. We hope someone located in Europe can join our maintainer group, someday to work together to promote this fantastic project and the community. Okay, so there are some different ways for you to involve in our community. If you are the user, and I think, you can, if you meet any problem, you can talk to us through raising, GitHub issues. And if you, have some, valuable experience, we encourage you to share your experience or use case with the whole community. That your use case or experience may create benefit to other community users. Okay, and we have a bi-weekly community meeting. You can join this meeting to discuss some problem and ask some questions from the maintainers. Most of the maintainers will be there. Okay, so if you want to do some contributions to the Harbor project, you can follow our contribution guide. Sorry. You can follow our contribution guide to submit your first commit. Okay, I think you can finding and fixing some bugs. It's maybe a good start. Okay, and if you want to introduce some new features or you want to do some integration with other systems, okay, you can submit a proposal. This is a process is defined in our government model. Okay, so we hope if you have done some significant contributions, you can join our maintainer group to maintain the, project and community. You will take a responsibility of review code and define and plan the releases. Maybe sometimes you need to, as a represent the community to do presentation in conference like KubeCon. So there are some more ways. We have mail group, we have Slack channel, and we have Twitter, and we also have a community meeting. There agenda you can find in the meeting schedule MD doc. So as we have not enough time, so I'll quickly go through the community sense. So we still have several minutes to ask a question.